Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube. Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We have a race preview for you as a couple tracks have some big racing days this weekend, and one of them is Oaklawn Park. Oaklawn is part of the Road to the Derby package. This one kicked off last week, so you can still save some money now and get past performances for all the big events leading you into the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby. I know, David, you're part of the betting strategy, sometimes putting together additional help for the folks on out there. And this is a big weekend. So some folks will be tuning in, looking for a little bit of help from us at Oaklawn Park and then at Gulfstream Park. Let's head to Oaklawn for race number 8 on Saturday, March the 29th. This one is the Grade 3 Oaklawn Mile. 1 mile on the main track there. And Banishing makes a lot of sense in here. Saudi Crown is the proven horse through the last few years. We'll say, kind of looking through his form overall, I do think he's been kind of a bully, kind of in spots where he gets like easier trips and he can kind of beat up on folks in those situations. Banishing been really good as of late. Then you have some other horses who have the ability to jump up with a big race here and there. So a solid addition of the Oaklawn Mile here, David.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the two horses that are likely to attract most of the support. Banishing, who is just the now horse. He's been in great form recently for David Jacobson. And Saudi Crown trying to show that he can still produce that form after a somewhat lackluster effort last time in the Pegasus World Cup. I guess we'll see how many of these horses do participate on Saturday because there are a couple of cross entries, one horse who's turning around very quickly. So wouldn't be surprised if there's a scratch or two in here.
Let's take a look at the Time from US pace projector and see what they think. They've got Just Steel, Saudi Crown, Banishing, all in the mix early. I'm McDreamy. There are a lot of horses who seem to have natural speed, and then a couple that really seem like they want to go. David, did this surprise you at all?
No, not really. When I handicapped this race, it felt like there were several horses that wanted to be forward. And obviously, Saudi Crown might be the most trip dependent of all of those because he does run his best races, as you said, when he can kind of boss the field around, maybe set his own pace up front. He can go quick and keep going, but he's not a horse that necessarily likes to get into a fight with others. So we'll see what kind of trip he works out and how aggressive Florent Giroux is from the outside post position.
Let's meet the field for the Oaklawn Mile. This one has a purse of $500,000, and we can kick it off with the race replay last time out. This is the 5th season. This was Wine Steward making his return to the races. He had not raced since June of 2024, and honestly, David, the last couple of years, he's had his years abbreviated because of injuries where he would have been able to run much more. So this horse hasn't done a whole lot wrong out on the racetrack, and there are probably, some bigger races down the road for him and some upside with a lot of those layoff lines. I don't really have knocks on him overall as a horse. I just think this is a tough field, and I'm a little concerned with the trip he might get being down on the inside, but can he sit maybe right behind the leaders and get a good trip in here? Certainly don't have a problem with his overall form.
Yeah, when you just glance at his form on paper, he at first glance seems like a really viable option in here because he's got that stalking style where maybe he can sit behind the speed, and a mile really does seem like it's the best distance for him. I've just never been the biggest fan of this horse, Gino. I mean, he got some very good trips in a few races last year, particularly the Lexington, where he was on the inside most of the way. I thought the rail was the place to be that day at Keeneland. Another good trip in the Peter Pan, still couldn't seal the deal in there. Don't care about the Belmont, but the last race we just took a look at in the 5th season, his return, he got a 96 buyer. That's a number that I want to see reproduced because I didn't think a whole lot of the field that was behind him that day. We'll see if he could reproduce it against a tougher group here.
I'm McDreamy, came off of a win last time out. He's lightly raced. He has some upside. Doesn't have a whole lot that he's done wrong in his career either, but this is a pretty big step forward from what he's been facing.
He's a horse that I would have liked a lot more if there wasn't so much speed in this race because it
Yeah.
does seem like he's one that does his best running when he can get clear on the front end and then just keep going. He did that when he broke his maiden at Turfway, and then especially last time in his allowance win at Oaklawn, he was visually impressive in there. He set a legitimate pace and just kept going on the front end, but he was beating a weaker field in this, and we saw two back where he did have serious trouble at the start, but he just didn't adapt that well to a completely different running style. So we'll see if he's quick enough to make the lead here, or if he even starts here, because he is one of those that is cross-entered in the stakes later in the card.
Banishing comes off of a very good effort when finishing second in the Razorback Grade 3 event here. That was going a little bit longer, a mile and a 16th. That was his first start going the mile and a 16th in a while. He'd been sprinting as of late, and he continued to show that some of his big races were no fluke because he got back to back to back pretty big figures. And I mean, everything here makes sense for him, David. He's cutting back. This is like a softer group than he faced last time out. It just seems like it's a good spot for him. I think everything except for the price. He'll be a very short price in here.
He will. We'll take a look at the replay of his last race in the Razorback, which was his best performance to date, and he was fighting it out on the front end with Alexander Helios, who does just nose him out at the finish line here. They dominated the race on the front end. I do think you want to note this was a Rebel Day. There was a bit of a narrative that I think has some merit to it, that being forward and being towards the inside may have been a slight advantage on Rebel Day, and this was a race that featured a much slower pace than the Rebel, so these horses had every reason to keep going at the end. But he did still handle the mile and the 16th distance, and you might wonder where that came from based on his good form sprinting prior to that. But Gino, when you go back to the start of this horse's career, you wouldn't have pegged him to be a 6 furlong sprinter, because he started out as a horse that was on the Derby trail for Godolphin and a different trainer. And since he's come into David Jacobson's barn, he's been consistent, getting better and better, and he seems to fit really well here going a mile.
Just Steel was the Arkansas Derby, is the Arkansas Derby runner-up from last year, stakes winner, grade 1 place. He doesn't have the big race like he did last year, but he could be coming into better races, David. He's going to make his third start of the form cycle, third start off a long layoff. No, you like this horse a little bit.
Yeah, just trying to find an option in here that might get somewhat overlooked. Just Steel is a horse who, as you noted, has the back class from last season, finishing second in the Arkansas Derby. He had run some underrated races prior to that, not getting ideal trips with wide posts in a couple of the preps going back to last season. Obviously, he went to the sidelines following the Preakness with an injury, so he's working his way back. But you might remember going back to when this horse was a 2-year-old, he was not some finished product right from his debut race. It took him a while to sort of race into his top form, and it seems like he's a horse that last year really benefited from consistent racing. So now he's third start off the layoff. I thought he showed some signs of life last time, producing tactical speed, fighting back after he was passed at the end. He's turning around on short rest, but I think he's going to benefit from getting those starts under his belt. And if he runs here, as opposed to the shorter race that he's entered in later on the card, I think he's an interesting option from just off the pace.
Next up is Dematic, who also exits the Razorback. He was behind Banishing that day. So if we're using Banishing as kind of a measuring stick for this race, Dematic was 30-1, was well defeated. Could you make excuses, David, for that one, or reasons why you could give this horse a shot in here?
I mean, I do want to be a little forgiving of horses that were trying to close in the Razorback due to the things I mentioned for Banishing's performance, slower pace, track profile that was maybe against the closers. But Dematic didn't even make up ground. He just went backwards. Red Route 1, his stablemate, went right past him at some point in the stretch. And obviously, he came back to run well. I know you liked him last week after he was a little against it in the Razorback, and he came back to win at a decent price. But Dematic just didn't show any of that stablemate's closing finish. So he would really have to turn things around here.
Emmanuel began his career on the dirt. His first 4 starts were all on the main track. He had a win, then he was 4th in the Fountain of Youth. He was 3rd in the Bluegrass. Following that, he went to the turf. He ran well on the turf, and he's been only on turf and synthetic since. This one's kind of interesting to me, David, because I do think getting back to the dirt is not a bad move for them, but at this point of his career where he's been recently, they just feel like they've been trying different things here and there, and it's trying another surface. This will be his 3rd different surface they're trying in the 3rd consecutive race. So while I do think coming back to the dirt is interesting, I don't know about right now for this horse. I feel like he may be like past his best.
It kind of feels like we went through the same thought process with this horse, because I agree. I don't think he actually improved that much when he initially got on the turf. He got some very good trips to be successful on the turf, but I thought he kind of just transferred his dirt form over to that surface. So I wouldn't mind him going back to the dirt if he were in good form. But it just feels like since these connections bought him for $500,000 at auction last year, his form has just gone the wrong way for Mike Maker. And this kind of feels like a move of desperation at this point.
Payne is coming off of 4 consecutive wins. He's a 10-year-old now who has won 4 in a row, and he earned a 101 Buyer speed figure most recently. You know, going back through his career, David, was funny because he's had a couple of nice stretches. One back in like 2019 and 2020. Then again in 2023, he had a nice little stretch, and now he's actually in career best form, and he moves into a barn who can actually pick horses up. So he's very interesting. I just don't know how good he is overall and if he can spot up with a group like this. But last time he went a mile was February of 2024. He actually won that race. Since then, he's been going a little bit shorter. And when he stepped up in stakes races, that's when he seemed a little bit overmatched. I think he's been in stakes races 7 times and never really seemed like he was competitive. So I have a lot of kind of back and forth, kind of mixed signals on him. I guess price always should dictate when you go back and forth on a horse like this.
And let's take a look at the replay of that last race that we were referencing because it was visually impressive. I mean, what's that Trevor Denman line? He jumped in at the quarter pole. It really looks like that with this horse where he just mows this field down at the 8th pole and then pulls away in the final furlong to win by over 8 lengths, earning that 101 buyer that you mentioned, a career best at 10 years old. He's in great form right now. And the point I would make about him, Gino, when I hear you at the stakes company, but you might think that a late running sprinter like this wouldn't handle a mile. He stretched out to a mile a few times during his career, and he's generally run well at this distance. So I'm not too concerned about him stretching out, especially given the fact that we talked about there being plenty of pace in this race.
And we move to Saudi Crown to round things out. So he is a grade 1 winner. He won the Pennsylvania Derby a couple years back. And his A game, when he gets the right type of trip, is very good. On paper, there wasn't a whole lot of speed in the Pegasus last time out. He didn't run all that poorly. It was just a race you were hoping for a little bit more because the circumstances were pretty good for him. He went a little bit fast in that race, I think, to try to make sure he got the lead. I just was kind of mentioning it in the beginning and when we previewed this race. I don't know when he gets kind of punched or when he has to battle, if he's one that really wants to battle and go on. The outside draw should help with his running style. I've been watching the works with Tappan Street too, because he's coming back and running this weekend in the Florida Derby. And he seems like he's been really kind of handling Saudi Crown, at least holding up with him, who's an older horse here. So I'm not that high on him in this particular spot. I think he's certainly a horse who can win this race with the right trip. Of the shorter prices, David, I prefer Banishing. What do you think about Saudi Crown?
Yeah, we saw a lot of the same things regarding the workouts and his attributes coming into this race. And I would just make the point, Gino, I don't think this horse has been quite the same since the Saudi Cup last year. He ran an amazing race that day. He set these crazy fractions and just dug deep and gave absolutely everything he had to hold on for third there against some of the best dirt horses in the world. And he just hasn't dug that deep ever since then. And I wonder if he's just not the same horse coming back to the US after that trip overseas. And look, he ran fine at the Tenacious 2 back. I personally think Kinetic is a little overrated, who was second in that race, and he came back and disappointed last weekend. And the Pegasus, to me, there was an old version of Saudi Crown that would have been just fine, going 46, 110, and holding off White Abario. And he folded up when White Abario challenged him at the quarter pole. So he's a little tough for me to take off that performance.
So we move to the selections here, David. I wish I could get a little more creative. I just thought it was the right spot for Banishing, cutting back, just in really nice form, should get a good trip in here. So I wasn't unfortunately able to get too creative. Underneath, maybe we could find a little bit of value here and there, but you are looking for a little more value in this race.
Yeah, I just think we might see the best performance yet this year from Just Steel. Whether it's good enough to win this race remains to be seen. He might need some others to take a step backwards a little bit, but this horse has the back class, and he's going to be a decent price in this race if he starts here. So I put him on top. I do want to use Payne in there somewhere because I think he's going to pick up pieces and come running late if the pace materializes, and he should be a price if he does turn around on short rest.
Big day at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. Whoever you play in the Oaklawn Mile, we wish you the best of luck.